the internet is made up of many different networks, and the maximum data that the particular network can handle will vary from one network to another. So if the particular packet is of larger size, what will be done by that particular router on the way, it will be fragmenting it. So that is the issue. It's an internetworking issue. So each network or link imposes some maximum size for its packet, and the limits have various causes among. So why such a maximum size for the packet in a given network? So what are all the constraints? So these are all the constraints, like sometimes it could be the hardware reason, like if you are looking at the Ethernet hardware, so it is supporting some maximum size to be 1500. So that is what it can handle, right? And similarly, the operating system limits, like sometimes the OS may limit the buffer size to be some 512 bytes, and accordingly the packet size is to be restricted. And sometimes it is due to the protocol design itself. Means once you fix a protocol, and in the header of the protocol, for example the header of the IP packet or something, the number of bits in the packet length field, if you fix it already, for example in the packet, the length of the packet will be indicated by a certain field in the header, and you are fixing the number of bits for its length to be some 16 bit, like what we see in the IP header, right? So if it is 16 bit, the maximum size of the IP packet is restricted by this many bits. So that is 2 power 16 minus 1, that is something like 65,535. So like that you could see. So that is another reason, and also complaints with some other national standards, in the sense the standard is saying that the maximum packet size could be something like this. And of course another reason, the desire to reduce the error induced retransmission to some level, because if the packet is of very large size, chances of error is means a particular error may destroy the whole one, but if you are reducing it into smaller piece, the error handling and reporting those things could be easy. But at the same time, if one of the fragment lost now, the entire thing you have to retransmit. So like that, it is having both positive and negative side. So the desire to prevent one packet from occupying the channel long time. So this is something, the pipelining aspect, right? So you could see the instruction pipeline just like that, the executing an instruction as a whole or dividing it into smaller execution parts, and you are trying some kind of parallelism. So similarly here, a bigger packet you can transmit or you can divide into smaller piece, and some kind of pipelining kind of parallelism you can achieve. Otherwise the entire one will occupy the channel for a long time because of its huge size. So these are all some of the reasons why we insist some maximum size for the packet. So the result of all these factors is that the network designers are not free to choose all the maximum packet size as they wish. Rather, it is something restricted. For example, if you are looking at the Ethernet technology, you could see that it is having a maximum size of 1500 bytes. Similarly, the 802.11 wireless LAN is restricting the maximum size to be some 2272 bytes. And IP is more generous in the sense that it is restricting the maximum size to be 65,535. Why it is 515? Because they subtracted an minimum size of an IP header of 20 byte and minimum size of TCP header another 20 byte. Only they subtracted the IP header size. So the payload part is found to be some 65,535 bytes with some 20 byte IP header, right? This plus 20 will make that this particular value, right? So that is the thing. Similarly for this Ethernet also, this 1500 plus some 18 byte of header and another 18 byte of trailer, like that it makes the total size something like 1536 byte total size. So this is the payload size only, right, in all these cases, right? Yeah. So this is something you can remember. Now another concept, the path maximum transmission unit and the concept of fragmentation. The host usually prefer to transmit large packets because this reduces the packet overhead, such as the bandwidth wasted on header bytes. If you are dividing it into smaller pieces at the sender side itself, so when you are looking at the host point of view, it will always prefer the packet to send us of larger size, because otherwise everywhere you have to append that header, and that is going to just waste the bandwidth. So like that the host will think, so it will just send packets of maximum size. Say if you are using IP protocol, that's 65,535 bytes including the minimum header, right? So now an obvious internetworking problem, appears when a large packet wants to travel through a network whose maximum packet size is too small. Like the IP decided, like let the packet size is of 65,535, but it is sending it over an Ethernet, right? So Ethernet can handle only 1500 bytes. So it is now forced to divide that 65,535 packet into smaller fragments. So that is a situation. So on the way, you even once Ethernet is happy with 1500, but it with 1500 bytes you are sending, and on the way there could be another network which is capable of handling size less than this. So that time again you are in trouble, right? So it's a general internetworking problem, of course. Now the solution to this problem is to make sure that the one trivial solution is like the problem does not occur, right, at all. How you will be ensuring that such a problem will not occur? The only way is you should know what is a minimum maximum transmission unit. So we are going to see what is MTU, that size only. So just look at all the networks on the way like this, right? So for this particular network, the maximum transmission unit, let it be some 1500, say Ethernet. On the way another network, it is of some 900, and this is of some 1200. So whatever it is, so who is the dominating one, in the sense who is that bottleneck here? This 900 byte, right? So if the source is having this kind of a knowledge, it can set the packet size of 900 byte, and it can send accordingly. There will not be any such problem on the way, definitely. But how source will be knowing this minimum maximum transmission unit of any of the network on the way? So however, this is easier said but than doing. So when it comes to the implementation, it is it's not that much easy, but we will see kind of the thing maybe in the last session. So a source does not usually know the path a packet will take through the network to the destination. So this is a difficulty we are facing. So how the source will be knowing which path will be chosen? So that is something dynamically decided, right? So once you know the path, there you can try to get this 900 byte or whatever it is. But first of all, the very first question is how you will be knowing the path. So it is certainly does not know how small the packets must go. Must be to get there, right? So this packet size is called something called the path maximum transmission unit. So if you look at this particular path, the maximum transmission unit of this MTU of this particular network is 1500, and MTU of this particular network is 900 bytes, say bytes, and MTU of this particular network is some 1200 bytes. So what is the path MTU? That is nothing but minimum of all this, that is 900 bytes. So that is the thing, right? So the path maximum transmission unit. So even if the source did not know the path MTU, packets are routed independently in a connectionless network, right? So that is another issue. That means even though for this path it could be, but what is a guarantee that everybody is going to choose this path? In a connectionless network, then subsequent packets may be choosing a different path even. So this routing means that the path may suddenly change on the way, which can unexpectedly change the path maximum transition unit, of course. So an alternative solution. So this is a trivial solution, stop the problem from the beginning itself, but this is something difficult, like that we felt at the beginning, but later on we will come to this at the end. Okay, so that is a different story, but this is how people started thinking at the initial point. What are all the difficulties they could face when they try to find the path maximum transition unit? And also once, even though that is the case, what will happen if the packets are choosing a different path? Like that they were confused, so they move on to an alternative solution. That is to allow routers to break up the packets. So this is where that fragmentation, that terminology came. That means now we are going to fragment the original bigger packet, or break up the packets into smaller pieces called fragments, and sending each fragment as a separate network layer packet. Now each fragment is now a different packet, in the sense it is to be padded with that header, everything, right? But there are troubles in putting fragments back together. So this something like it's very easy for us to destroy things, right? So something like it's a fragmentation part is very easy, simply you can divide. But what about the reassembly, right? So when you try to put them back, what are so that is where the real challenge. So where you are reassembling in the correct order, or whether you are getting the entire one without missing anything. So like that many issues will come in the reassembly part. So now let's see the two variations of this fragmentation: transparent fragmentation and non-transparent fragmentation. So this classification is actually based on the reassembly part. So how that reassembly is done, accordingly we have this classification. So let's see with the help of a diagram, then its explanation. So here in the first part we will see this transparent fragmentation, or the fragmentation is something which you are doing, the fragmentation reassembly together is something transparent to everyone. So that is the thing. So what is happening here is an original packet of something like this large size is coming at a router G1. So now what the G1 will do, this particular network 1 is not capable of handling this much large size packet. So G1 is forced to fragment it. So it G1 fragments a large packet, say into some so 4 plus 3 7 parts, so whatever it is, and then all these fragments were taking different routes, but before this all these 7 packets leaving the network, at the exit part there will be another router G2. So this is the entry router to this network, and this is the exit router to this network, and this exit router is now responsible for reassembling back. So that is the thing. So what is the thing happening inside this network 1 is transparent to others, in the sense they don't know the things that that are executed inside. So when the others are looking, say that same packet is coming out from the network, right? The same packet. So but who did it actually? The exit router G2 reassemble the fragments. So that is what happened. But when we are looking at the network as a whole, the outsiders were not knowing about the thing that happened inside this network 1, or the difficulties were masked. So that is why we call it as the transparent fragmentation. The thing happened inside is transparent to everyone. So now others will see like this, and on the way there is another network. So this G3 is the exit router for this network, and at this point this one again network 2 is capable of handling a different maximum transition unit, but better than this. So here it is fragmented into 7 parts, but here it is fragmenting into 3 parts only. Maybe it may handle bigger size, right? But of course again when you are leaving that particular network 2 at the exit router, that reassembly will happen, and for the outsiders it is again the same packet. So this is the idea. So you will feel it something like nice one, but the problem, this fragmentation and reassembly will happen at every network almost, right? So maybe on the way network 1 network 2, everywhere you have to do all these thing again and again. So that kind of a difficulty we are having. And also this exit router is something kind of constrained or overloaded, so we force all those fragments to go through only this exit router, and some of the fragments, if they wish to choose a different path, that is not possible here, right? Everyone is supposed to go through the paths inside network 1, and they should touch up this G2, then only this will happen. So it's a kind of restriction to our freedom. For the real meaning of connectionless networking is not we are not able to give. So that is a difficulty we are facing, and of course that burden, this difficulties, every router is now how to do this breakup is something that is easy for us, but what about the reassembly part? That is somewhat difficult. So everywhere it has to be done. So we have an alternative called a non-transparent fragmentation, as the word says. So here the within a network, the exit router, there is no burden at all. So G4 also there is no burden at all. So what will happen? So as soon as the packets were reaching at G1 will think see that these are of large size, so definitely G1 will do this fragmentation, but there is no reassembly at all at G2. So now the packets can either exit this network through G2 or through a different path. Anyway, they will reach to the next network, some of them may be going through other way also. So everything is fine. But in this example particularly, all the 7 were taken here. So without any reassembly at this exit router G2, they were reaching the next network, and next network they are actually allowing a bigger size packets. So that is the reason you don't have to further fragment it. All these 7 were happily go through the second network also, and finally they will reach the destination. But you have to remember, if the second network is something that can't handle this much size, there will be further fragmentation. So here the one packet gets fragmented into 7, and those 7 are smoothly traveling to receiver, but on the way out of the 7, some of them may fragment further into pieces also. So like that you can generalize this concept, and they can choose any path, and finally at the receiver side, the receiver is supposed to do the reassembly. and whether it is this exit router or this receiver, how this reassembly is done, that we will see, right? Some kind of ordering should be given and everything should be packed nicely. So in transparent fragmentation, this reassembly is something that is to be done by the exit router, where in case of non-transparent fragmentation, the reassembly is something to be done by the receiver only, not in between. So that's the main difference. So you can, but anyway, whether it is transparent or non-transparent, we have a common problem of header, like the original packet get fragmented into 7 parts. With all those parts, the original header you are supposed to duplicate, and then only that routing will happen, right? Yeah, and at the receiver side, all those extra overhead in terms of header will be removed, and it will be packed, and it will generate the original packet. So that is the thing. Right, so we will see. So the explanation is like this: two opposing strategy exist for recombining the fragments back into the original packet, and those out of those two packets, first we will see the first one, like what I explained, the transparent fragmentation. The first strategy is to make the fragmentation caused by a smaller network. So on the way, that smaller network, like the network 1 or network 2, they fragmented, right? So the what is done by that smaller network, it's transparent to any subsequent network. So that is the idea, right? So it's something somewhat hidden from others, so through which the packet must pass on its way to ultimate destination. In this approach, when an oversized packet arrives, say in that figure, that G1, what it that G1 did, the G1 is the entry router of network 1. Hope you remember, or go visit that figure. And it breaks up it into fragments, say 7 fragments in that example, and each of these fragments is addressed to the exit router, that is G2, where they are all recombined. So the passage through the small packet network is made transparent, so something happened inside it, that complexity is hidden from outsiders. Subsequent networks are not even aware that fragmentation has occurred inside that network 1. Transparent fragmentation is straightforward but has some problems, of course. So exit router must know when it received all the pieces. So either out of that 7, whether it received all the 7 packets or some end of packet. So then only it can start that reassembly process. So how this counting is done by the exit router, or you can simply depend on some flag saying that this is the last packet, something like that. Same problem is with non-transparent fragmentation also. It's a general problem. Also, because all packets must exit via the same router, so that they can be reassembled. So like what I already told you, the router may be constrained in the sense everybody is forced to come out through this G2, right? They the freedom is restricted, and also more work is given to G2. So by not allowing some fragments to follow on route to the ultimate destination and other fragments to disjoin route, choose disjoints, some performance may be lost, right? So definitely such performance lost you can expect. So more significantly is the amount of work that the router may have to do, that reassembly part, particularly the work in the sense, because that fragmentation is somewhat easy, so everybody is supposed to do this work, right? And if it may need to buffer the fragments, of course, that reassembly part they are highlighting, the packets has to be buffered whenever they are arriving, and decide when to throw them away if not all of the fragments arrive. So maybe by looking at this end of packet flag, or some using some count and all, they will decide it, but that burden is there. So some of this network may be wasteful. Two, as the packets may pass through a series of small packet networks and need to be repeatedly fragmented and reassembled. So this is the main issue other than all of them, the repeated fragmentation and reassembly. So can we save it? So that is the question. Yes, we can do a better one by means of the non-transparent fragmentation, and it is a strategy that is being used in our current it's a current one, right? Particularly in that IP protocol we are using it. So the other fragmentation strategy is to refrain from recombining fragments at the intermediate routers. So at intermediate routers, the routers are not supposed to fragment, right? So we are stopping them. Once a packet has been fragmented, each fragment is treated as though it were of the original packet, and the reassembly is done only at the final destination. So everybody will be treated as a different packet and header will be added, and they can choose any path, and there is no restriction like everybody should exit through the exit router, nothing like that. They can choose any path, and finally when everybody is reaching that actual destination, the reassembly will happen at the destination host. The main advantage of non-transparent fragmentation is that it requires the routers, the intermediate routers are now doing less work or no work at all, because they were supposed to do maximum that fragmentation part, so which is an easy task. The reassembly is fully done by the actual destination only, so we made them free because routers are supposed to run the routing algorithm. There are many things for the routers to do, right? So why they have to do this also? So IP, the core protocol of the network layer, the dominant one, the IP protocol is working in this way. So when we discussed that IP header in the previous module, fourth module, we already seen that, so you can recollect it. A complete design requires that the fragments be numbered in such a way that the original data stream can be reconstructed. So how this numbering is done, particularly if you look at IP, if you remember, so every fragment is given a packet number, so that is nothing but an absolute byte offset. So the relative position of that, the first byte is given as the packet numbers within each packet, and there is a flag, hope you remember the more flag, indicating whether it is the end of the packet or not. So let's have a look into that header so that you can recollect this part. So this is something we already seen when we discussed the IP header, right? So this one, right? See this, here you can see this second row is fully for fragmentation part. So when you look at the IP header like this, so this is the identification field that will identify all fragments to be part of a single packet. So every packet will be given a common identification part value, that is some 16-bit value. Out of this 32-bit, the half of the 32 bits, right, that is 16 bits are given for the identification field, and this is actually saying right, I mean every fragment is part of the single packet. So whenever it get fragmented again and again, this identification field will be kept as it is. Now this fragmentation offset is what they set as the packet number, the relative position of this particular fragment with respect to the starting one. For the very first fragment it will be 0, and for the second one how many bytes are already passed, right, that offset value, or what is the byte number of the very first byte of that particular fragment, that will be noted as the fragment offset. And this more flag is acting as the end of flag, in the sense if it is equal to 1, that indicates that this is the last fragment, and for sorry, if it is 0, that indicates that it is the last fragment. More is equal to 1 means more are yet to come. That means for all intermediate fragments, more flag will be 1. That means we have the destination is supposed to wait for more and more fragments for the reassembly. So whenever we are getting a fragment with a more flag is equal to 0, that indicates the end of that particular fragment, right? Hope you remember. And similarly the do not fragment, so this is a special flag that we are using to indicate that I don't want to fragment this particular packet at all, maybe due to some security reason and all. But on the way, you know, sometimes a router is forced to fragment, and you are saying that by setting this do not fragment flag, you are saying that don't do fragmentation, and that time the router will discard your packet and it will be sending you an ICMP error message, the destination unreachable message, something like that. We will see when we discuss the ICMP message. So hope you remember this second row of the IP header that is dedicated for the fragmentation part in the IP protocol. So this is what we are discussing here. So in non-transparent fragmentation, particularly this flag is nothing but the what is that, mod flag, right? That mod flag, and so indicating the end of the packet, the mod flag, and also the absolute byte offset, that packet number, that last 13 bits. So while simple, this design has some attractive properties, of course. The fragments can be placed in a buffer at the destination. So at the destination, how this reassembly is done, they will be buffered in the right place for reassembly. Even if they came out of order, reassembly will done nicely. So we will see, we already discussed somewhat how this reassembly is done, right, or you go through that textbook for it, right. It's a very nice algorithm, so just have to have a look into it. So that is particular to IP. So fragments can also be fragmented if they pass over a network with yet smaller MTU. So this fragmentation can happen at any level on the way. So finally the fragments can be of arbitrary size and maybe of 1 byte even. So in worst case, when you keep on dividing, you may be forced to divide maybe the last fragment could be of size 1 byte. You can visualize it, right? Plus of course the packet header. So in because even though it is 1 byte fragment, you are supposed to add the header, right? So in all these cases, the destination simply uses the packet number. So particularly in the IP fragmentation, the absolute byte offset and fragment offset. So sorry, this packet number, what they mean is the identification number. Okay, sorry, I confused you at some point. So the packet number is different and the absolute byte offset is different. So packet number will is the unique number given to all fragments, and of course the fragmentation offset to indicate the relative position, and also the end of packet flag like the more flag. So together we will determine the order in which that reassembly can be done. So everybody is having a role. So unfortunately this design still has problems, like the overload can be higher than with the transparent, because transparent fragmentation at the exit router the reassembly is done, but here it is not like that. So every fragment will be going through all the networks, so that overhead is supposed to carry with the the entire bandwidth is going to be affected because of this fragmentation. But in case of transparent fragmentation, only the bandwidth of that particular smaller network will be affected, but here it is just going through the entire network, right? So that header will be an overhead throughout the communication. So you could see this example also. So packet number is the unique number given for all packets. So this is the original packet which without any fragmentation, right? So this so here there is no fragmentation at all, and some part of the header is shown here. So this 27 is what? The packet number, the unique number. Even though you are dividing it into parts, see in this figure B, what we done is we reached a network where we are forced to fragment it. So when you fragment this one into two fragments, two different parts, this 27 is retained as it is. Again in a third and in a second network, so this is happened on the way on intermediate network. So in another network again it is fragmented in a way that this is getting broken into two parts. So again this 27 is maintained. So this is something that is unique for all the fragments. So that is our packet number. Now end of packet bit. So more flag is treated differently, but here it indicates that end of flag bit is equal to 1 means it is the last one, but in IP protocol 1 means it is the intermediate one. So you don't have to be confused. So this is used in a general sense. So end of packet bit is equal to 1 means this is a last fragment, in the sense for this particular fragment packet as a whole there is no fragmentation at all, right? So this is the first and the last fragment. So that is why the end of packet bit is 1. But when you divide it into 2, right? So this is the A, B, C, D up to H is this A, B, C, D up to H is maintained here, and this I and J is moved to this particular fragment. So what happened, which is the last fragment here? This one. So for the last fragment the end of packet bit is set to 1, and for others it is set to 0, right? Similarly here also these are all intermediate ones, so for them the end of packet bit is reset to 0, and for the last one only it is set to 1. But when it comes to more flag, it is working differently, because more is equal to 1 means more are yet to come. That is the meaning. So for the intermediate one, more will be 1, and for the last one there is no more to come. In that sense more will be 0. But this is something taken as a general example, so that is why it is interpreted like this. Anyway, you have to distinguish the last one from the remaining one, that's all. Now another one is the offset, right? Is the relative position. So that is what is going to determine the order in which the reassembly is to be done. So for that offset part, the number of the first elementary fragment in this particular packet. So this is a packet. What is the number of the, so this is just the starting one, right? That is why we are giving a value of 0 for this offset. Now let's see, so this is a scenario. Initially we have a fragment when the elementary data size is assumed to be 1 byte, right? This H, E, all of them are 1 byte, 1 byte, 1 byte. So the original packet contains say 10 data bytes. See A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. So totally there are 10 bytes as the payload, right, in the original packet. Now it reaches a particular network where the fragments, after passing through a network and that particular network is having a constraint that the maximum packet size is of just 8 only in that particular network. So 8 plus header, like that. So what we will do, this 10 byte you are forced to divide into two parts, because the particular packet in this particular network can handle a maximum transition unit of 8 payload only, with the header. So 8 means A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Those 8 bytes with the header maintained in the first fragment, and in the second fragment these I and J is separated. So now see what is the what called this particular field, right? So for this one it is 0 because it is a starting one. Now for this one it is 8. How we are getting this 8? Right, how we are getting this 8? Because if you start numbering the actual payload, like this is a 0th byte, this is the first byte, this is second byte, third byte, fourth byte, fifth byte, sixth byte, seventh byte, and eighth byte, and this number is actually coming here, right? I mean, what is the number of the first elementary fragment? Elementary fragment, this as a whole is a fragment. Elementary fragment means the very first unit of data inside that fragment. So what is the number of the first elementary data in this particular fragment? That is 8. That 8 is given. So this is a kind of offset. With respect to the starting position, I am 8 away. So that is what it says. Now see, we moved to a third network where the fragment says after passing through a particular gateway of maximum size to be 5 bytes. So the third network is restricting the maximum size to be 5 bytes. So we are just adding 5 bytes, like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So these 5 will be there in the first fragment, and we are dividing it further, like the fifth one, sixth one, and seventh one, and this 5 we are storing here, right? Hope you understood how this fragmentation offset is calculated. And similarly the relative position is 8 and 9, and this 8 is stored here, right? So this is the way how we are doing this fragmentation. And there is one more concept, that is without fragmentation, how this thing can be done. I thought of adding, but I think the video size is increasing, so I'll break at this point. The continuation we will discuss in the next part. Yeah, thanks for watching.